Hello, Jessica. How are you today?
I'm great, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad that we were able to make it work. And thanks for your patience and showing back up today. Would you take a minute to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. I'm Jessica Speer, and I write kids' books at this stage in my career. A lot of my books focus on like social emotional topics. So I like to dive into some of the tricky stuff that happens in the preteen and the teen years. I've got a background in social sciences, and really just love to explore that age range. It's kind of a time of big changes. I have a book that came out just this summer. It's called BFF or NRF, Not Really Friends, A Girl's Guide to Happy Friendships.
I am really looking forward to discussing your book with you. I think it's wonderful, first of all, that you have you've analyzed and targeted that this group, it is indeed a transition time and a tough one. Oh my goodness. I mean, if you ask me about some of my harder times, I would definitely tell you most of them being during my teenage years. I think
Yeah.
a lot of girls would say that actually. And so I feel like we need more resources for teenagers in general, but also for girls especially. And so I was really excited looking at your flyer for the book because I think too nonfiction is so important because you've got 11 chapter topics here, but you've really covered some important things with, you know, not just friendship and qualities of friends, but then also conflict and bullying. How do we handle the people that we don't get along with because we're going to run into them for the rest of our lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's such an important skill, and we don't get a lot of training on that. We kind of learn on the fly, and sometimes we don't even learn the best ways to deal with some of these tricky scenarios. So my hope was, just to put that out there, but to put it out there in a way that's digestible. So I thought a lot about that, and this book actually grew out of a friendship program I ran for girls, and what they love best were activities, quizzes and things to really explore themselves and explore their world. So the book is filled with that, just to make it engaging, because it is, who wants to read a book about, hard things? Not too many of us. But if it's a book that, is written in a way that's engaging, we learn about ourselves, and we learn, helpful tips how to navigate some of these awkward, tough times, it goes down a lot easier.
That's really true. I feel like the interactive nonfiction side of things, I mean, of course, it's important, first of all, and we'll, of course, chat about this because we're on a literacy podcast, but it's important for kids to read, and to feel like they see themselves represented in literature and in text. But furthermore, with what you're saying, I like this unique format of your book. I haven't, personally seen it yet, but you mentioned there's a fill in the blanks, there's quizzes. And I like that because I remember when I was a teenager and I really enjoyed looking through magazines. It was
Mhm.
always fun to do those quizzes. They weren't friendship quizzes, but to do the quiz that find your perfect guy type or what your favorite foods are. I don't know. I mean, they were pretty nonsensical, but they were always fun to take. Quizzes are fun, they're interactive. Um, and so I meant to ask you this too earlier. Do you currently have any teen girls in your life or that you're connected to that helped prompt, writing this, or that you know of that it's helped?
Yeah, and so this book is actually geared towards 8 to 12 year olds. So it's a middle grade, and the reason I targeted that group is, one, I could see this is kind of where things begin, and then they tend to, get a little more complex as we get into middle school and high school, but things really start happening towards the end of elementary school and in the beginning of middle school. So I, for a few years, ran friendship groups for that age group. And so a
Wow.
lot of the content were ideas and concepts that I got to test, directly with kids. I had boys too, but what's really interesting is it was really hard for me to get the boys there, but once I did, we could get them engaged. But I wanted this book to really connect with the scenarios I was seeing in girls. And I have two daughters myself. And so when I was working on and writing this book, they were both in elementary and middle school. So it was perfect. I could, test ideas and, work with girls directly. And then I could also, bounce ideas and test them with my daughters too. So this book kind of almost wrote itself. By the time I was ready to start this book, I had spent so much time, already on this topic and working directly with kids that I've written other books, but this one came out so fast just because it was already written pretty much, by the time I started.
Yeah. And oh my goodness, it helps so much when you have the perfect audience who you've written it for, there to test things out on. So, I'm a picture book, really basic early year picture book writer, but I have several nieces and then my daughter who's 3. And so my first book, Sophie Stands Out, was written. I kind of wanted a wider range, kind of like ages 3 to 8, because I feel like the 3 and 4-year-olds, they are read aloud to. Maybe the 5, 6, even the 8-year-olds obviously are going to be reading to themselves, but it still had a message that could connect with all those girls. And so when I was writing my script, I would read it out loud to like my nieces and to my daughter and just kind of see what their reactions were, what they had questions about, because that's my target audience. Like, even though, yes, I also want adults and teachers and parents to realize it's a book for everyone. When I'm writing it for those girls, I want to see what it is that comes to mind for them, and make it kind of more accessible that way. So it's really cool that you did have kind of your own testing group to try things out on.
Yeah. And I love, because kids are so honest. They will tell you, they will tell you that, no, that doesn't work, or I don't get that. And so, yeah, I have not even attempted to write any sort of books that I haven't had really deep feedback from kids. So I'm so grateful, that I've got, a bunch, that's, I guess, my process, which, we kind of learn as we go as we're writers, but my process is definitely, start with the kids, really start there, and then maybe, get to writing and then go back and share again what you did, because they're the litmus test. Yeah, they're going to let you know where you're off and what doesn't work, and that's invaluable. That's and because it's real. This is all for them, anyway. So what a perfect group to be telling me, where I'm spot on or where I need to do some more work.
Definitely. And I think that's important too, because one of the questions that I kind of had planned on asking you and that I've seen show up on Podmatch were about just the premise of why are friendship and social struggles so common and so hard in preteen and teenage years. How would you speak to that? Because I think they are, that there isn't any argument from me on that. They are very challenging and they are definite struggles during that time.
Yeah. And I know you've got little ones, so you're not quite there yet. But what I love to talk to parents about this, because I feel like it sets them up in a place where they're not really reacting to this as they might if they don't know what plays into that, because what plays into that makes so much sense as to why it's happening. So first of all, when we are little, so we're toddlers and we're in early elementary school, things are really about play. So our friends are about play and proximity. So we're just getting together to play. And, they're our classmates, they might be our neighbors, so it's play and proximity. Well, for every kid, there begins a shift. For girls, it starts earlier, maybe in late elementary, definitely in middle school, where it's actually less about play and it's more about shared interests. And kids are also exploring, for the first time in their lives, they're starting to explore their identity, like, who am I and who are my friends and, who do I want to be? So they're exploring their identity, they're looking for shared interests. They are trying more than ever to fit in, because they're starting to pull away from their families. And we as parents start to feel this. There's a little shift that happens. Again, it's different for every kid, but probably by middle school for all of them, they are starting to put more weight in their friendships than their families. So therefore, these friendships mean more too. So that's why we all have these deep memories from this period, because we're going through adolescence. Our bodies are changing, our emotions are big, and these relationships mean a lot. So that's why we remember the hurts that we had during this period, because it's a huge transition going from that, simple play and proximity to, hey, I'm looking for more out of these friendships while I'm also trying to figure out myself and how I fit and what I care about. And a friendship requires so many different skills, and they're brand new at these skills too, so learning how to be trustworthy, learning how to cooperate, learning how to be flexible, learning how, to be honest, and communicate in healthy ways. There's so many complex skills that go into friendship. So yeah, that's what got me started on this book. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot to this. So I wanted to put a guide map out there, like just a framework and some tips, so that as girls enter this phase, and boys, they have got a little more information at their fingertips, to guide them through the inevitable bumps in the road. Nobody's going to get through this phase without, a few bumps, because we learn from those. That's how we learn.
Definitely true. I was just discussing that with my little guy, because my kiddos are younger than the age you're discussing, but he is at an age where we're almost ready to start school. So he's preschool right now, but we're trying new things. We're trying things he's good at. We're just trying new things out. And he's currently in this little basketball program we go to each Monday. And sometimes he loves the drills and loves playing with the team. And then sometimes he dislikes the games, doesn't want to do it. And I've identified that he really does struggle with some form of perfectionism. All of us do, but it's just like hard to see it in a kid, because he really is almost timid about taking risks. And I told him the other day, buddy, we've got to fail to learn, and that's okay. And everyone else on the team and everyone else trying to learn how to dribble with both hands, or to shoot by, hopping on one foot to do a layup, everybody has to experience a level of challenge. It doesn't come naturally for anybody. You've got to practice. That's why we're here. And so, that continues obviously well into the preteen and teen years. And I think the other thing is, at his age, most kids kind of just say, oh, that's my friend, because it's someone that they see on a weekly basis and they've played with. And I love that. I wish that could be reality for the rest of time, because even as an adult, as a mom, sometimes I feel like I have to go back and revisit, okay, what are these skills that help me be a better friend as a mom? And sometimes the tricky thing too is your kids get along really well, but you and the other mom are very different and don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And as they get older and you're doing more play dates, and it can get tricky. And so even as a mom, and a wife and a mother and someone maybe in the workplace, you have to revisit these tactics, these skills of being a friend, right? And so
yeah.
I love the title of your book, BFF or NRF, because I feel like boys, like, I'm going to go ahead and say this from what I already see, the difference between my son and my daughter. Boys don't really want to say bestie or best friend forever. That is totally a girl term. That's really a cliquish, type thing. And that's way more of a girl thing than a guy thing. They'll just say, that's my friend, that's my buddy, if they're a boy. But I like that it's BFF or NRF, because I feel like, at least for me, I've always wanted to be able to be unique and comfortable enough with myself to just get along with everybody, right? But I don't feel like that's reality. And so it is important actually to identify that some people are just not really your friends, and it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you mean. But if you're striving for friendship, you're going to be at a point where you're kind of almost sorting people into who you get along with and who you seek out and spend time with. And the people that just aren't serving you, that aren't helping you be the best version of yourself, that aren't, good to you. And then that can even lead into that bullying aspect, which I talk about a little bit in my picture book as well. It originally started out actually as mostly the conflict was the girl getting bullied for staying in her pajamas all day long. So Sophie is a girl that's confident, but she does, like everyone else, listen to those around her and starts to doubt herself a little bit. And this is a little girl, this is she's supposed to be 6 or 7 in the story. And so, and bullying starts, as early as that, it really does. Some kids don't realize what they're doing. but it is important to give our kids the tools to understand, okay, this is what a friend is like. This is what a friend does, sounds like, acts like, feels like. And then this is someone who's not your friend and maybe a bully. And you need to, speak up when these things happen and when you're being made to feel a certain way. So
I
there's a
love
lot
that.
in there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that you picked up on that because it's so I sat on that title for so long because I was so nervous. I didn't want to throw out another label, but what I've really felt like kids needed is, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's just a bad fit or you're not being treated well. So I felt like it's really important to put something out there in a way that parents can talk to their kids about, yeah, this is not really feeling like a friendship. This is not really a friend. Because sometimes we need that said to us, and we need to see that you're right. This is not treated, I'm not being treated well here. And it's okay for me to back away from this friendship or choose to, pursue a different friendship because this is not really a friendship. So yeah, I love that you picked up on that because I was so nervous by that. You know what? This is reality. We do have those people in our lives, and it's important for us as humans of all ages to realize, friendship is a skill. We all have strengths and weaknesses in this area. We're all learning and growing. And sometimes you're in a relationship that isn't really a friendship, so you've got some choices there, and how perfect for girls and boys to hear this as they head into middle school, because middle school is full of so many changes, and there's a lot of relationships that get awkward and uncomfortable and change and end because of all those reasons I talked to earlier, so I just want kids to know that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just this is not a relationship that's maybe worth pursuing right now. There needs to be some more skill building and some changes for this relationship to feel really good, and that's okay. That's part of being humans in relationship, right?
Definitely. And that is important because you don't, like you said, you don't want kids to feel like something's wrong with them. It's just maybe both they and the individual need to go through some more growth experiences or some changes before they're really going to be compatible or be able to get along with each other. And that is okay. I like that you mentioned too. I mean, I'm assuming, even though it's written for ages 8 to 12, that this is a kind of a workbook too for parents to go through with their kids. Is that right? Am I understanding?
Yeah, I would, in the perfect world, I would love for parents to read it too, because I feel like it offers a framework. So when their son or daughter is in maybe a not really friend situation, they can reference it together and say, hey, I'm seeing some aspects about this friendship that makes me feel like maybe it's not really a friend. What do you think? So I think I wrote it in a way that it is kind of a framework that you can go back and reference those things. And I feel like I should mention too in the book, there's this friendship pyramid, which, dives into close friends and acquaintances. And then under that is the not really friends, but, with a big exclamation point is, remember, everybody changes, everybody changes. So these kids that are not really friends right now, everybody's learning and growing. And so they are going to be totally different kids. And what's fun now my kids, I wrote this, they were in elementary. Now I've got a middle schooler and a high schooler. So I've got to see that. I've got to see that change in my kids, in other kids. And it's so important for us as parents to remember that everybody's doing the best they can with the skills they've got. And, when you get to high school and your kids are, about to walk out the door, you'll be amazed at the changes you've seen in your kids and their peers, and the changes in their friendships and the growth. So I think, it's important to stay open to that. Let's avoid labeling kids as this way or that way, because they're kids, and they're just figuring it out, as we all are.
Definitely important to remember that as individuals, and they're growing. I've been reading How to Raise an Adult, because it's not a typical parenting book, since it goes through the motions of, if you do this in your kid's childhood, this might happen or reflect later in adulthood. And it's just very eye-opening, because we don't really look at our kids as adults or potential adults. And I mean, that's very normal too. Like when they're a baby, we baby them. We probably baby them beyond when we should sometimes. Then they're kids, then they're growing up, they're teenagers. And then we're like, thinking about all that parenting and how we're helping them and what we're doing that hinders them. But I like that idea of the friendship pyramid, first of all. And then I know that your book shares, I think it's 9 hidden friendship truths.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And what are a couple of those? Give us kind of a little sampling of what those are and what people could expect from the book.
Okay, so friendship truth number one is friendships have different phases and change over time. And so, this becomes real again, upper elementary and middle school, all of a sudden, our friend group might totally change, or we might, feel like we don't actually belong with a friend group anymore, or, a friendship doesn't feel like it's a good fit anymore because of all those changes we talked about earlier as kids, go through this change, going from, proximity and play to more, self-identity and looking for deeper connection and shared interest. So by just putting that out there, so let's, the friendship truth is friendships change and have different phases, and that's okay. And so again, my purpose is let's avoid that, we're not okay, or that the other person is not okay. And friendships just go through seasons, and they change. And you might be great friends one year and then maybe not so good friends, and you might become friends again or not, so just being okay with that and staying open to that, I'm hoping will keep kids from creating stories about themselves and others. So yeah, that's one of the truths. And another one is everybody makes mistakes. It's, just again, getting back to friendship requires a lot of skills, and we all mess up sometimes. We all goof up. We've all got strengths and weaknesses. So, just breaking down some of these things so that when those rough patches hit, we can fall back on these truths like, oh yeah, this is perfectly normal. This is okay.
Yep, because the rough patches are going to come, and we don't want anyone to just give up, but maybe just to reconsider and go back and revisit these things so that they're not man, just because making friends is hard. I know that for me personally, especially in junior high and high school, I was the type, I've always been a people pleaser, but I was the people pleaser that got picked on. So like the girls that picked up on the fact that I was really eager to serve and please would take advantage of that. And I was treated pretty poorly, especially my freshman year in high school, 8th grade year, and then 9th grade, just by like a couple girls. But it was like, it took a while for me to like trust people again, especially girls, because of the hurtful things they did. As they learned things about me, they exploited me. They asked me to do things for them that they could do very well themselves, kind of just, and I don't love to go into that because again, it was not a pleasant time for me, but I am sharing that because I know that there are others that go through painful phases where, it's really important to determine what a friend is and what that looks like.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because that is such a common experience, for kids, especially in middle school, to find a close friend. And so that actually is one of the truths. I'm going to look at my list. That is number 4. Close friendships can be hard to find and may not happen to middle school or later, because when I was working with girls, I found that they thought this is just me, that I'm the only ones going through this. But I got to watch this in my kids too. It's really hard to find that connection, especially in middle school. So that is a totally normal experience. I want to make sure that kids and parents know that is okay. Again, there's nothing wrong with you. It is really hard to find close friends. And on the friendship pyramid, the close friends part is the very tip of the pyramid. And, right under that, it says close friends, harder to find, and then there's these few qualities that, we have with the few people that, if we look at our relationships, our close friends are a really small group that we tend to only run into occasionally, we meet them, over the course of our lives, and we tend to have, less than 5 of these close friends, and they feel pretty special. But as we are young people, it's hard to find those special connections that really have a deeper level of trust. And we feel like this person really sees us for who we are. So friendship truth number 4, this is hard. It's hard to find those, and it might not happen till middle school or later. So I love that you brought that up, because it's so important for kids, to know that, and to parents to know that that's okay. Like they might, I remember feeling so worried sometimes when my daughter was in between friends.
Yeah.
But that's just the phase that she's in. She is trying to find, she will find that. She's trying to find that, but it's not easy. You know, it's not easy.
Yeah. And I mean, this is not to discourage anyone, but I would say my closest friends, I did not find until high school. So yeah,
Yeah.
like sophomore year.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to ask you a little bit about further research you've kind of done in this area, but I also wanted to ask, have you always wanted to write? What was the hardest part of becoming a writer and making this book, creating this book for these kiddos?
Yeah, you know, and I didn't have a lifelong dream of writing. Actually, I remember like maybe a pipe dream that was just, you know, tucked in the back of my brain. It wasn't,
Yeah.
but I did, you know, throughout my career, I've always done a lot of writing in my work, you know, so not necessarily kids' books, but I was always writing and communicating and taking, I guess what I see consistently across my career is taking bigger concepts and making them digestible, you know, so
Yeah.
I guess my natural progression with, you know, becoming a parent and getting really interested about this stuff was to do that exact same thing, but for kids. So yeah, I connected with SCBWI, which is Society of Children's Writers and Illustrators, 10 years ago now, when I kind of started this process, when I started really exploring this and started running these friendship groups. And that was so helpful to learn the craft, to learn, you know, what you need to make sure you're doing if you're actually writing for children. So I was, you know, learning that craft while also deep into research and, you know, starting the framework for this book. So it all slowly came together. And as you know, as a writer, it's a slow process. You know, I would say from start to finish, I'm almost at 10 years on this book, and it just came out. You know, it just came
Yeah.
out this summer. You know, it takes time. So it's kind of a labor of love that you do with all the other roles and responsibilities you have in your life. But to any writers out there, just stick with it. You know, it's just it's persistence. I really feel like this writing thing is just all about, you know, being persistent and pursuing what you're curious about and what you love.
It is. It's a process. And I think allowing yourself the grace to grow with it and to stick with it and know that you're not going to be the writer of your dreams or the most ideal writer the first 3 times that you write something. And just going with it, you know, yeah, I feel like it's such a ride, but those are great tips. And I think nobody has to have wanted to write their whole lives as a kid to be a good writer. You just have to decide, and like you said, kind of stick to your craft and learn more about it. And SCWI is an excellent resource that I've just recently, I mean, it's funny, I've been told to join with them for a while by my publisher, but finances were really being poured into the book itself and getting it published this year. And so, but it is an excellent resource. And I think kind of leads me to the next question, which is, why do you think literacy plays such an important role for kiddos, but especially like that age group, the young kids moving into middle school? Why is literacy important to them or for them?
You know, especially at that age where I think books. So I love, you know, that, you know, preteen deep into books to, you know, to keep exploring themselves, keep learning about their world, finding their confidence and courage. Yeah, I am a huge, I'm a big reader, and, you know, my kids, because I'm a big reader, my kids are both big readers. We've always, you know, had just a ton of books in the house. And I know for them, you know, books have sometimes been some of their very best friends. You know, we find sometimes the perfect book that we need to read lands in our lap. You know, I love when that happens. I know that's happened for my daughters so many times, like, you know, that the perfect book they needed just lands in their lap.
And that's really perfect, like explanation for helping our kids get into reading. And I'm so sorry, for some reason it glitched right when you were starting to talk. So you had talked about how some of the kids are able to explore through literacy as well, explore worlds, explore concepts.
Yes.
I'm really sorry. I do not know what happened, but I got the like second half of it.
Oh,
So,
that's okay. No, I feel like so at this stage we talked about where starting in the preteen years, they're really exploring their own identity. What a great place to find that in books, just to explore other people's identities and other people's stories in books helps them figure out their own, because they might not have any kids or people in their world, with, an element of their own personality that they're really exploring, but they can
yeah.
find that in books. So yeah, what an amazing resource, for kids to have, especially in the preteen and the teen years.
And it's so important to help them, enjoy reading, because by that point they are reading to learn. They've learned to read at a much younger age. And that in and of itself is a beast. It is called learning to read for a reason. It's not just the ability to pick up and read, it'd be nice, but there's a reason why we have to learn how to do it. And then it adds so much value to our life, but especially as kids. And I think, like you said, if they can find a protagonist or a character that they really identify with, even to this day, as I read books, I always will look at the main character and think, wow, could I be like so-and-so? Could I be friends with that person, or is their personality just too strong? I can appreciate them in this text, but would I be able to, hang out with, talk to, play with this person? Would I just admire them? Would I try to be more like them? How would I be different around them? All those kinds of things. And we can explore so much through books. And I mean, I love reading. There's always time to read, and there's always like a desire for me to read, and I feel like it's been with me though since I was a kid. So
Yeah. And I when I was growing up, I loved those choose your own adventure books. Loved them. And I think that's why I'm writing interactive books, because I loved to be able to think through my options and make choices, as a reader too. So I was highly influenced by my early reading of Choose Your Own Adventures. And I'm working on my third book now, and of course it's full of all sorts of activities and puzzles and just ways for kids who want to engage with the book in a deeper way.
that is so fun, because I think interactive books and engaging books are so important for kids too. And those choose your own adventures are fun. My son's current favorite are What Should Danny Do, or Danny's on Vacation, where you read like the first few, everybody reads the same thing at the beginning, but then you help the main character make choices. And based on those choices, you turn to a certain page. And so then by the end, you've made so many choices that lead to a specific ending, but there are up to 8 endings by the end of that or whatever. And I like that. I think it's just kind of like the Midnight Library. I read that this year. It was one of my favorite reads, that there are so many different paths you can take.
Yeah.
And it does come down to a choice sometimes,
Yep.
just, one choice for how the rest of your day is going to go, or how you're going to shape your career, or whatever it might be, how you're going to pursue your education. So those are fun, and it'll be fun to see not only your current book, but then see the ones you have coming out. So do you have a targeted publishing date for those?
So my second one is coming out next August, and that is called Middle School Safety Goggles Advised. And it's all about just the weird stuff that happens in middle school. And for that book, I was lucky enough to have some teachers allow me in the classroom, and I worked with middle school students. The question, I was like, okay, if I was going to write a book about just the things that trips you up the most in middle school, or what's the weirdest thing, what would this book be about? And it just opened the floodgates. They told me exactly what this book was about. So then I started, and that book does, at the end of every chapter, it's choose your own ending. So it was so fun to write, because the stories I would hear from the students was the stories I remember. You're going to the school dance, and so what I love about this that format is especially as a middle school student, you get to read through what some options, what some outcomes might be before you actually live through that experience. You can do
Right.
choice A at the school dance, you can do choice B or C, so I'm one of those people that I can totally be a deer in the headlights person. Like if it's a brand new experience, I'm just deer in the headlights. But so I love to maybe think through how I might navigate that situation if it ever came up for me. So yeah, that book is coming out next summer, and it's packed with those sort of things. Same concept, just giving kids a chance to think through on their own terms, some of these tricky things that come up in our adolescence.
That's neat. And I love that you were like when I asked you earlier about research and what you're currently, working on or whatever. It's cool that you got to go in the classroom and see, because I mean, there really is no substitute for seeing things as it really is. Being a
Yeah.
former elementary school teacher, I can totally attest to that, because the things that like my principal and I might discuss, or my husband and I might discuss, that was my perception and how things went and how it came across to me. But then when my principal would drop in, there'd be other things that stood out to her and different things she was looking at. So, there's just so much there. But I feel like, yeah, starting in the classroom is probably going to make that book so accessible and so applicable to teens as well.
What was so interesting about that is I had lots and many conversations, and I would also give students the chance to write, a response. And by doing that, I got a totally different perspective. So if a kid is more of an introvert, or say they're sitting at a table with someone they would never speak up in front of, but by giving them a slip of paper and a chance to maybe jot down their thoughts about something, it just, I got some of my very best, pieces of advice or nuggets of wisdom or stories, by giving kids pencil and paper, and they could really kind of share with me what they truly thought, but weren't in a place to maybe say in front of a group or to my face, directly in that moment. So yeah, lots of fun ways. And for any nonfiction, authors out there or kids interested in that, there's so many great ways to connect with kids, because I've just always found they're so full of wisdom. Like the stuff that they know is just incredible. So I always try to include as much of that as I can in my writing.
That is so cool and good to know. I mean, it's always nice to have like a little backstory, a little background to the author as well. I always enjoyed that growing up, learning things like that. So, okay, is there anything else you would like to add or share today with our audience?
No, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for just your love of literacy and connecting, kids with books and people and writing. So thank you. I know you are super busy with little ones, so I appreciate you doing this, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that it worked out. And I love the chance to promote other authors. So I'm really eager. I know there's lots of teachers that tune into this podcast, so there will be several of them that might check into this resource. And then there's tons of parents as well. And those are both, good target audiences for what you've done. Is there anywhere specifically, I know you have a website, and then like any social media that you can share where people can find you?
My website is Jessica Speer, SPEER.com, and that has links off to all my social media. I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and even Pinterest. So people can connect with me, wherever they want to. But the easiest place is maybe start at the website, and then you can click off to whichever social media channel you'd like to. But on those channels, I'm usually Jessica Speer author. So if you search on that, you can usually find me.
Okay. And then is your books available on your website? Is it also available on Amazon, or where else?
It's everywhere. So it's Target, it's at Barnes and Noble, it's on Amazon. You can, some small independent bookstores have it, but if they don't, they will get it for you. So yeah, pretty much anywhere books are sold.
That's excellent. It's always nice. Everybody has to go through a different publishing journey, but it's just nice when it's accessible in many different places, because I have loved personalizing books and selling it through my blog, but I realize that's not everyone's comfort level. That's not everyone's speed. I've had several friends order off Amazon. That's just more their thing. And I've said, if you're here in Utah, then I'll sign it for you. But if you order it from my website, I'll sign it. Normally send a little sticker or something, like a little message if there's a kid that it's being dedicated to. So all the fun things, right? But it's
Yeah.
nice to have all those, like Barnes and Noble, Amazon, not at Target yet, but that's on my to-do list. And some other local bookstores here. So yeah, that's awesome. And I'm so glad you got to come on today, Jessica. And thank you so much for your time. It's been
Yeah,
fun.
great to meet you. Okay, and good luck with your book too.
Thank you. Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye.